Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
In California, new animal housing regulations are expected to impact the bacon and pork industry. Meat prices may be rising and new regulations come into place. We hear more from NTD's David Lamb.
Starting January 1st, menu items such as the bacon, egg, and sausage platter may cost more than you'd expect due to a state law passed for animal housing standards. Californians voted to prevent animal mistreatment in 2018. The measure requires farmers to provide more space for egg-laying hens, breeding pigs, and calves raised for veal. The National Pork Producers Council, which represents the pork industry, writes that the law imposes unscientific animal housing standards that reach outside of California's borders to farms across the United States. National veal and egg producers are optimistic about meeting the new standards, but only about 4% of pork operations now comply with the new rules due to cost and time constraints. While California's pork production is low compared to other states, its residents do consume roughly 15% of all pork produced in the country. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
While over 15 million people are still suffering from floods in China, the Communist Party releases a video supposedly depicting the people's gratitude towards the regime. However, an accident exposes the video to be staged. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
China's flood problem extends far beyond the country's northwestern desert. Nearly 15 million people are suffering because of its central China's Henan province. This updated figure was released during a Monday press conference held by province-level authorities. Starting with Henan's capital city, Zhengzhou, on July 20th, severe floods have sunk much of the province at a growing rate. As of noon on August 2nd, official data shows more than 300 have been killed. That's as flooding destroyed 90,000 houses and soaked over 16 million acres of crops, a quarter of which are unsalvageable. Among them, 10% of this is false crops. Henan is one of China's major sources of agriculture and food production. The direct economic losses are estimated to reach $18 billion. NTD cannot independently verify these numbers. With the Chinese Communist regime known to underreport disaster data, we estimate the actual figure may be far larger. The highest level of China's emergency response protocol is still in effect. A video released by the Chinese Communist Party is drawing suspicion online. It shows a truckload of Chinese soldiers as they prepare to leave a flood zone. That's after completing rescue work there. Residents there reportedly learned about their departure and came to say farewell. The clip also captures several residents tossing gift boxes onto the truck in what looks like a show of gratitude. So far, nothing appears out of the ordinary. It's in line with the Chinese Communist Party's typical depiction of the relationship between the people and the army, full of positivity. But the end of the video reveals something else entirely. At one point, one of the gift boxes accidentally opens, only to reveal that it's empty, with no real gift inside for the troops. This video was shot last week in Henan province. It soon gained attention from social media users. One Twitter post reads, "This should be awarded with the most fake prop award." China's flood season has arrived in the country's largest desert. Heavy rains and melting snow from nearby mountains drenched over 100 square miles. According to Chinese media Caixin, the flood hit the northern edge of the Taklamakan Desert in China's Xinjiang region. It first struck in mid-July. The high water has since receded, but the desert is still largely covered in mud. Amid the damages, energy company Sinopec Group was one of the hardest hit. The state-run company is a subsidiary of China Petrochemical Corporation, the nation's largest oil and gas giant. 30,000 sets of Sinopec equipment were flooded. The high water also destroyed a number of roads in Sinopec's production area. An online hashtag referring to the disaster made it onto the trending topics list on Chinese social media. Chinese internet users expressed their shock at the flooding online. One writes, "How big does a flood have to be to soak the desert?" The Taklamakan Desert is the second largest mobile desert in the world, behind the Sahara Desert in Africa.
Republicans on the House Foreign Affairs Committee released an updated report on the origins of the CCP virus, concluding that it did leak from China's Wuhan lab. The report provides new evidence about the lab's research, the virus leak, and the subsequent cover-up. NTD's Melina Weiskup has those details.
The lead Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Michael McCaul, says it's time to completely dismiss the theory that the CCP virus originated from a wet market in China. In an update to a September report, new evidence suggests that the virus leaked from the Wuhan lab between August and September of 2019. Around this same time, both the head of the Chinese CDC and the director of the Wuhan lab publicly expressed concerns about safety at the lab. The Chinese Communist Party then started its massive cover-up, removing the Wuhan lab's virus database in the middle of the night. Around this time, the virus started spreading throughout Wuhan, and athletes who were there participating in the Military World Games started getting sick with COVID-19-like symptoms. This explains how many of the countries who participated in those games started seeing cases back in their countries around November of 2019. Virologist Shi Zhengli has repeatedly lied about the research being done at the Wuhan lab, the safety protocols, the Chinese military's presence at the lab, and why the lab took down their virus database. Representative McCaul says it's time for the U.S. to use all tools to root out the truth, including sanctioning scientists from the Wuhan lab and subpoenaing EcoHealth President Peter Daszak, who characterized the lab leak hypothesis as a conspiracy theory. McCaul says this was the greatest cover-up of all time and has caused the deaths of more than 4 million people around the world, and people must be held responsible. And the World Health Organization has called for a follow-up investigation, which Chinese officials have rejected, calling it not scientific. President Biden did call on U.S. intelligence officials to continue to investigate the origins of the virus, including the possibility of a lab leak. And that 90-day deadline President Biden gave is coming up this month. So we'll see in the following weeks what those new findings reveal. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
The surge at the border continues and shows no signs of stopping. Drone footage shows around 1,000 illegal immigrants being processed under a bridge in Texas. And 2 large migrant groups encountered in the Rio Grande Valley break records one after the other. Here are the details.
New drone footage captured by Fox News correspondent Bill Maluchin and his team reportedly shows up to 1,000 migrants being held under Angel Duaz Bridge in Mission, Texas on Sunday. In the video posted to Twitter, you can see Border Patrol agents processing the giant group in the shade of the bridge, the temperature nearly 100 degrees. Maluchin, who's been covering the border for some time, said it's the largest group his team has ever seen being held under the bridge. You can see the group from another angle in this video he posted to Twitter. A reporter from Spanish-language news network Telemundo 40 posted this wide-view shot Saturday night. It shows the group stretched under a large portion of the bridge. The reporter wrote on Twitter, "When will President Joe Biden and VP Kamala Harris actually pay attention to the border crisis issue? More than 1,000 migrants under Angel Duaz Bridge in the Rio Grande Valley, and more keep coming by the minute." Texas Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar shared more photos of the scene on Saturday, not yet as crowded as it would become on Sunday. He wrote on Twitter, "Our Department of Homeland Security agents and border communities are overwhelmed and must be prioritized. DHS will again encounter over 180,000 immigrants at the southern border during July, adding to the more than 1 million migrants that have arrived at the southern border in fiscal year 2021. Something has to change." Those coming across the border Saturday included 2 heavily pregnant women who, according to the sector's chief Border Patrol agent, were going into labor. Last Tuesday night, Rio Grande Valley Border Patrol agents encountered the largest group of illegal immigrants on record, a whopping total of 509 people all in one go. Less than 24 hours earlier on Tuesday morning, they encountered a group of 336, the second largest in the sector's history. On Friday, bipartisan pair Cuellar and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham called on President Biden to appoint a new border czar. They want Biden to choose former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson or someone with similar credentials to help tackle the crisis. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
Hundreds of Australian soldiers are helping police officers enforce virus restrictions in Sydney. The city is in its second month of lockdown. Eve Johnson reports.
Army patrols hit the streets of Sydney on Monday to help enforce coronavirus curbs as Australia struggles to stop the Delta variant from spreading. Around 300 unarmed military personnel have been tasked with going door to door, checking that people who have tested positive are isolating at home. They're also accompanying police officers on the hunt for rule breakers, combing neighborhoods that have emerged as hotspots as the country's largest city enters its 6th week of lockdown. The state of New South Wales, home to Sydney, reported 207 new cases in the past 24 hours. That follows a 16-month high recorded late last week. Meanwhile, a lockdown in Australia's 3rd biggest city, Brisbane, has been extended. Due to end on Tuesday, it will now stay in place until the end of Sunday. Throughout the global health crisis, Australia has managed to keep its cases relatively low, but its vaccination drive has lagged many other developed countries. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has come under fire for his handling of the pandemic. He's promised that lockdowns will ease once the country vaccinates 70% of eligible citizens, which should happen, he said, by the end of the year. Only around 20% have been inoculated so far.
Forgotten painting technique is seeing a revival in one of Russia's major cities as local artists seek to restore this tradition. NTD's Anna Rodriguez has more on this.
In the Russian city of Volhov, there's a saying, "Where the rose blooms, love lives." The proverb refers to a local folk painting centered around a rose. An artist at a Volhov painting workshop tells us a romantic story behind the blue and red flower. A girl got badly ill. A boy who loved her prayed to the god of the Volhov River to give him a wonderful flower to heal her. The god answered his prayer. The girl recovered and the rose became a symbol of love. It's believed that the art of painting on wood in the Volhov district began at the end of the 19th century. Various household items were painted this way, most commonly spinning wheels. But recently, this style could only be found in museums.
We started to ask ourselves, is it possible to revive the craft that was dominant in a certain territory?
Lebedev and his team decided to take Volhov painting classes to St. Petersburg to expose this traditional art form to modern Russians.
During the art process, you can look at yourself through an inner process.
The design initially only used 2 colors, red and blue, symbolizing fire and the water of Volhov River. In Soviet times, the rules of Volhov patterns were not observed and unconventional colors were introduced. Lebedev and his team are determined to revive the traditional Volhov pattern. Anna Rodriguez, NTD News.
Navigating a world of economic madness, you need to have the right guide. What did today's decisions mean for your tomorrow? We ask why. What's the alternative? Uncover the deeper reasons and the hidden influences, and highlight the real opportunities for profit. At NTD Business, we connect the dots for you. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.